My horse never trusted anyone. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Montana territory as Eleanor Grant knelt beside the injured horse, her worn calico dress pooling in the dust. She'd been a widow for 8 months, but the ache in her chest felt as fresh as the day they'd buried Thomas beneath the cottonwood tree. "Easy now, sweet boy," she whispered, her small hand hovering above the stallion's trembling flank. The animal's dark eyes rolled with pain and fear, foam flecking his midnight coat. "I know you're hurting. I know." The horse's breathing came in sharp, labored bursts. Eleanor could see the gash along his shoulder, deep and angry. Someone had tried to break him rough, tried to beat submission into his spirit. Her heart clenched with familiar pain. She didn't hear the footsteps approaching until a shadow fell across her and the horse both. "Mom, you might want to step back from Storm." Eleanor's head snapped up. The man standing before her blocked out the sun, tall and broad-shouldered, his weathered hat casting his face in shadow. But she could see his eyes, dark as creek stones, watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "He's hurt," she said simply, turning back to the horse. "He needs help. He needs a bullet." The man's voice was rough, unused. "Horse like that, gone wild with pain, he's dangerous. Already tried to kick through the barn door twice. He's scared." Eleanor kept her voice low and soothing, still focused on the stallion. "Whoever hurt him taught him that people mean pain. He just needs someone to show him different." She began to hum, a low melody her grandmother had sung to her as a child. The horse's ear twitched toward her. Slowly, carefully, she extended her hand. The cowboy made a sharp sound of warning. "Ma'am!" But Storm's nose touched her palm, velvet soft despite his fear. His breathing began to slow. "I'll be damned," the man breathed. Eleanor glanced up at him again, really looking this time. He was younger than his gravelly voice suggested, maybe 35. With strong features weathered by sun and wind. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, pale against his tanned skin. His hands, she noticed, were large and work-roughened, but he held them carefully at his sides, as if uncertain what to do with them. "My horse never trusted anyone," he said, wonder softening his voice. "Not since I found him half dead in a canyon 3 years ago. Won't let anyone touch him but me, and even then he's cautious." "Animals know," Eleanor said quietly, stroking Storm's neck now, feeling the powerful muscles begin to relax. "They know who means them harm, and who doesn't." The cowboy crouched down beside her, moving slow and deliberate. This close, she could smell leather and pine and something distinctly male that made her pulse quicken unexpectedly. "Name's Cole Bennett," he said. "This is my ranch. Saw you walking up the road about an hour ago." Eleanor Grant. Widow Grant, I suppose, though I hate that word. She kept her focus on the horse, easier than meeting those intense, dark eyes. "I was told in town there might be work here. Cooking, cleaning, mending, whatever needs doing." Cole was silent for a long moment. When she risked a glance at him, he was staring at her with an unreadable expression. "You walked 6 miles in this heat to ask for work?" Eleanor lifted her chin. "I walked because I don't have a horse, and I need the work because my husband's debts didn't die with him." Something flickered in Cole's eyes. Respect, maybe, or recognition of a kindred pain. "Storm's shoulder needs cleaning," he said gruffly. "Probably stitching, too. You think you can help with that, seeing as he's taken to you?" "I can try." "Then consider it your first job. Come on." He stood and offered her his hand. Eleanor hesitated only a moment before taking it. His palm was warm and calloused, his grip careful, despite the obvious strength in those fingers. He pulled her to her feet as easily as if she weighed nothing. "You're smaller than I expected," he said, not releasing her hand immediately. "When they told me in town a widow was looking for work, I pictured someone older, harder." Eleanor pulled her hand back, trying to ignore the tingling where his skin had touched hers. "I'm 23, Mr. Bennett, and I've buried 1 husband already. That makes a woman plenty hard." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Cole, and I meant no disrespect, ma'am. Just meant I'll have to adjust my expectations of what kind of work you can handle. I'm stronger than I look. I'm beginning to see that." He turned toward the barn, and Storm, miracle of miracles, followed him without a lead rope, then allowed Eleanor to walk at his other side. The stallion stayed calm between them, as if their presence together created some kind of sanctuary. The barn was neat and well-maintained. Speaking of a man who took pride in his work, Cole gathered supplies while Eleanor continued soothing the horse with soft words and gentle touches. "This is going to hurt him," Cole warned, bringing over a basin of water and clean cloths. He might panic. Then you'll need to hold his head steady, Eleanor said, and talk to him. He trusts your voice. Cole positioned himself at Storm's head, one large hand on the stallion's neck. Never thought I'd take orders from a woman half my size, he muttered, but there was no heat in it. I'm not giving orders, Eleanor replied, beginning to clean the wound as gently as she could. I'm just saying what needs doing. Storm flinched and whinnied, but Cole's low voice rumbled through the barn, steady and calming. Easy, boy. She's helping. Won't let anyone hurt you. You know that. Eleanor worked as quickly as her careful hands would allow, cleaning away dirt and dried blood. The gash was deep but clean. No sign of infection yet. Needs stitching, she confirmed. You know how? I stitched up my husband after a farming accident. The memory caught in her throat. He healed just fine. Was a runaway horse that killed him 2 months later, not the wound. Cole's hand moved from the horse to her shoulder, brief but warm. I'm sorry. Don't be. We weren't. She stopped herself. It doesn't matter now. But Cole was looking at her with those knowing eyes, seeing too much. Weren't in love? Eleanor's hands stilled. That's forward, Mr. Bennett. Cole, and you're right. Not my business. He paused. But I know something about marriages made for practical reasons. My wife married me for the ranch, left 2 years ago when she realized Montana winters were longer than her patience. The confession hung in the air between them, unexpected and intimate. I'm sorry, Eleanor said softly. Don't be. We weren't in love either. He smiled, crooked and sad. Seems we have that in common. Their eyes met over Storm's trembling body, and something passed between them. Recognition, understanding, a shared loneliness that made Eleanor's chest ache. I should finish, she whispered. Cole nodded, his hand sliding away from her shoulder. She immediately missed its warmth. The stitching took concentration and steady hands. Storm shifted and snorted, but between Eleanor's gentle touch and Cole's soothing voice, the horse held still enough. When she tied off the last stitch, both she and Cole released, held breaths. You did good, Cole said. Real good. We both did. Eleanor wiped her hands on a cloth, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, how the dimming light through the barn door cast them in intimate shadows. He'll need the wound dressed daily, watched for infection. Then I guess I'll need you to stay. Her heart skipped. Stay? For the job. Cole cleared his throat, stepping back. Cooking, cleaning, like you said, and tending Storm. Plus, I've got 3 ranch hands who'd appreciate home-cooked meals instead of their own terrible attempts. Pay's fair, room and board included. There's a small cabin out back, used to be the foreman's before he retired. It's yours if you want it. Eleanor knew she should ask about the particulars, wages, hours, exact duties. But all she could think about was those dark eyes watching her, that gentle hand on her shoulder, the way his voice had softened when he'd said her name. I want it, she said. Cole's smile was small but genuine, transforming his weathered face into something almost boyish. Good. That's good. An awkward silence stretched between them. Storm nickered softly, as if amused by their discomfort. I should show you the cabin, Cole said finally. Get you settled before dark. The cabin was small but clean, with a stone fireplace, a simple bed, a table and 2 chairs. Someone, Cole, she realized, had already laid wood for a fire and left fresh linens folded on the bed. It's not much, Cole said, standing in the doorway as if uncertain whether to enter. But it's sturdy, warm in winter, cool in summer. Door's got a good lock. Eleanor heard what he wasn't saying. You'll be safe here. It's more than I had this morning, she said honestly. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Cole, he nodded, hat in his hands now, turning it by the brim. In the fading light, he looked almost vulnerable. Breakfast is at dawn, he said. I'll show you the kitchen, introduce you to the hands. They're good men. Rough around the edges, but respectful. Any of them gives you trouble, you tell me. I can handle myself. I'm beginning to believe that. He moved toward the door, then paused. Eleanor, her name in his rough voice, sent shivers down her spine. Yes? I'm glad you came here today. Don't know why exactly, but I am. Before she could respond, he was gone, his boots heavy on the wooden steps. Eleanor sank onto the bed, her hands shaking now that she was alone. What had she just agreed to? Working for a man who made her pulse race with just a look, living alone on his property, tending his horse. But when she closed her eyes, all she could see was Cole's face, when Storm had trusted her touch. The wonder there, the loneliness she recognized like a mirror. Maybe they were both exactly where they needed to be. The next morning came cold and bright. Eleanor woke before dawn, as she always had, and made her way to the main house. The ranch was bigger than she'd realized in yesterday's dimming light. A sprawling operation with corrals and outbuildings, everything well maintained despite the obvious lack of a woman's touch. The kitchen was large and functional, stocked but disorganized. She found what she needed and set to work, letting the familiar rhythm of cooking calm her nerves. She was pulling biscuits from the oven when Cole walked in. "Smells like heaven," he said, then stopped short when he saw the table. "You made all this. Biscuits, gravy, fried eggs, bacon, and coffee, strong enough to wake the dead. You said the men would appreciate a home-cooked meal." The men? Right. Cole was staring at the food like he'd seen a ghost. "Haven't had a breakfast like this since my mother died 10 years ago." Eleanor's heart clenched. "Sit. Eat while it's hot. The hands? I made enough for everyone." "Sit, Cole." He obeyed, lowering his large frame into a chair that suddenly seemed too small. Eleanor poured him coffee, acutely aware of his eyes following her movements. "You didn't have to do all this your first morning," he said quietly. "I wanted to earn my keep. You earned it yesterday with Storm." He took a bite of biscuit and closed his eyes. Lord have mercy. Something warm bloomed in Eleanor's chest at his reaction. When was the last time someone had appreciated something she'd done? Thomas had barely noticed her cooking, too focused on his own failures and debts. The 3 ranch hands arrived minutes later, gruff men in their 40s who introduced themselves as Dutch, Samuel, and Jorge. They were respectful but surprised, clearly not expecting someone like Eleanor. "Boss didn't mention the new cook was a lady," Dutch said, his weathered face breaking into a grin. "And a pretty one at that." "Dutch," Cole's voice held a warning. "Just being friendly, boss." But Eleanor saw the way Cole's jaw tightened, the protective instinct there. It should have annoyed her. Instead, it made her feel something she hadn't felt in months: safe. After breakfast, Cole showed her around the ranch properly. The chickens needed tending, the garden had been neglected, and the house itself needed a woman's touch in every room. "I know it's a lot," Cole said, almost apologetically. "Take it slow. Priority is meals and Storm's wound. I can handle more than that." "I know you can, but I don't want you working yourself to death first week." He paused by Storm's stall. The stallion looked better already, more alert, less fearful. "Want to help me change his dressing?" They fell into an easy rhythm, Eleanor cleaning and rebandaging while Cole kept the horse calm. Their hands brushed as they worked, each touch sending sparks up Eleanor's arm. "You're good with him," Cole said. "Natural. My grandmother kept horses. She taught me they're like people. They remember kindness and cruelty in equal measure." "Smart woman." "She was." Eleanor secured the last bandage. "She told me once that the measure of a person is how they treat those who can't fight back." Cole's eyes met hers. "Then what does Storm's trust tell you about me? That you're a better man than you probably give yourself credit for." The air between them felt suddenly thick, charged. Cole's hand came up, almost touching her cheek, then dropped. "I should get to work," he said roughly. "Fences need mending on the north pasture." Eleanor nodded, not trusting her voice. The days fell into a pattern. Eleanor woke before dawn, cooked, cleaned, tended the garden and chickens. She changed Storm's dressing daily, and the stallion grew more trusting with each passing day. The wound healed clean and fast, but it was the evenings that undid her. Cole would return as the sun set, dust-covered and exhausted. He'd wash up at the pump, and Eleanor would have dinner waiting. The ranch hands ate in the bunkhouse, leaving Eleanor and Cole to share meals in a kitchen that felt increasingly intimate. They talked about everything and nothing. His childhood in Texas, her years with a grandmother who'd raised her after her parents died, his dreams for the ranch, her love of books she could rarely afford. "Never learned to read much," Cole admitted one night, his voice rough with something like shame. "Just enough to get by." "I could teach you," Eleanor offered, "if you wanted." His eyes met hers across the table, something vulnerable there. "You'd do that?" "I'd like to." So the evening shifted again. After dinner, Eleanor would pull out the battered book she'd brought, the only possessions she'd kept from her marriage, and Cole would sit beside her at the table, their shoulders nearly touching as she guided him through words. He was a quick learner, focused and determined. Eleanor tried to ignore the way her heart raced when he leaned close to see the page. when his rough voice stumbled over syllables, when he smiled in triumph at mastering a difficult passage. "You're a good teacher," he said one night, 3 weeks into her employment. "You're a good student." Their eyes met and held. Cole's hand covered hers on the table, large and warm. "Eleanor, A knock at the door shattered the moment. Jorge stood on the porch, hat in hand. "Boss, sorry to interrupt. Got a problem with the south fence. Looks like someone cut it deliberate." Cole's expression hardened. "Damn, I'll be right there." He turned back to Eleanor, frustration clear in his eyes. "I'm sorry, this might take all night." "Be safe," she said softly. He nodded and was gone, leaving Eleanor alone with a racing heart and trembling hands. She knew what was happening between them, had known for days, maybe weeks, but knowing and accepting were different things. Could she risk her heart again? Risk caring for another man who might leave her alone? But Cole wasn't Thomas. Thomas had married her out of desperation, needed her work more than her company, barely touched her beyond fumbling marital duties. Cole looked at her like she was precious, listened when she spoke, made her feel seen. The house felt too empty without him. Eleanor cleaned up the dishes, banked the fire, and returned to her cabin. But sleep wouldn't come. She kept seeing his face, feeling his hand over hers, wondering what he'd been about to say. It was past midnight when she heard horses. Eleanor went to her window and saw Cole riding in with the ranch hands, all of them looking grim. The next morning, tension hung over breakfast. "Fence was cut in 3 places, Cole told her quietly after the hands had left. "This is the 2nd time this month. Someone's trying to run off my cattle." "Do you know who?" "Got suspicions. Earl Jackson's been wanting this land for years. Made me an offer last month that was more threat than business." Fear clutched Eleanor's chest. "That's dangerous, Cole. If he's willing to sabotage, I can handle Jackson." But his jaw was tight, his eyes worried. "Let me help." He looked at her, surprised. "How?" "I could ride out with you sometimes. Extra set of eyes. I'm a good shot, too. My grandmother made sure of that." "Eleanor, no. If there's trouble, then you'll have backup instead of facing it alone." She stepped closer, tilting her head back to meet his eyes. "You don't have to do everything yourself, Cole Bennett." His hand came up slowly, cupping her cheek this time. His thumb brushed her skin, sending shivers through her body. "You're something else. You know that." His voice was barely above a whisper. "Is that good or bad?" "Good. So damn good it scares me." Eleanor's breath caught. "Well, why does it scare you?" "Because I'm starting to need you. And needing someone—" He shook his head. "Last time I needed someone, she walked away and didn't look back. I'm not her." "I know, but that doesn't make it less terrifying." They stood there, barely breathing, the morning light slanting through the kitchen window and painting them both gold. "I'm scared too," Eleanor whispered, "of feeling too much, of losing again. Then maybe we're both fools, maybe." Cole's other hand came up to frame her face, his touch achingly gentle, despite the calluses. "What are we doing, Eleanor?" "I don't know, but I don't want to stop." He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away. But Eleanor rose on her toes to meet him, and when their lips touched, the world narrowed to just this. His mouth on hers, careful and questioning, his hands cradling her face like she was something breakable and precious. The kiss was sweet and searching, nothing like Thomas's hasty, perfunctory kisses. Cole kissed her like he was learning her, memorizing her, like she was worth taking time with. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "I know. Me too. This complicates things. Yes, you still work for me. That's not people will talk." Eleanor pulled back enough to look him in the eye. "Let them talk. I've been talked about before. I survived." A smile tugged at his lips. "You're fiercer than you look, Eleanor Grant." "I have to be. The world isn't kind to women alone. You're not alone anymore." The promise in his voice made her chest ache. "Not if you don't want to be." A crash from outside interrupted them. They found Storm kicking at his stall door, agitated and wild-eyed. "What's wrong with him?" Cole moved toward the stallion carefully. "His wound looks healed." But Eleanor had already spotted the problem. "Look at the fence line." 3 horses stood at the property boundary, unfamiliar horses, thin and skittish. "They're hurt," Eleanor said, moving toward them. "Someone abandoned them, or they escaped from someone who was hurting them." Cole's voice was hard. "Probably Jackson. He's known for working horses half to death." The next hour was spent coaxing the frightened animals into the corral. All 3 bore signs of abuse: whip marks, saddle sores, near starvation. Eleanor's hands shook with anger as she examined them. How can people do this? Same way they do it to each other. Cole's jaw was tight. think power gives them the right. They worked together through the afternoon, tending the horses' wounds, offering food and water. Storm watched from his stall, calmer now that he could see what was happening. He knew they needed help, Eleanor realized. That's why he was agitated. Cole looked at his stallion with new respect. Animals know, like you said. As the sun began to set, they finally finished. 3 horses were bedded down in the barn, clean and fed and safe. Eleanor leaned against the fence, exhausted. Cole stood beside her, close enough that their arms touched. You're covered in dirt, he said softly. So are you. Looks good on you. She laughed, surprising herself. Liar. I mean it. He turned to face her fully. You look like you belong here. In this barn, on this land, with me. Eleanor's heart hammered. Cole, I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other, but I haven't felt this alive in years, Eleanor. Not since before my wife left. Maybe not ever. I feel it too. But I'm afraid of what? That this is just loneliness. That we're both so starved for affection, we're mistaking it for something more. Cole's hands came to her waist, pulling her closer. You think that's all this is? I don't know. Do you? Instead of answering, he kissed her again. Deeper this time, more certain. His hand slid up her back, pressing her against his solid chest. Eleanor melted into him, her fingers curling into his shirt. When they broke apart, both trembling, Cole's eyes were dark with want. That feel like just loneliness to you? His voice was rough. No, she whispered. Good, because I'm falling for you, Eleanor Grant. Hard and fast and terrifying as it is, I'm falling. Tears pricked her eyes. I think I'm falling too. He pulled her close again, wrapping his arms around her. She fit against him perfectly, her head tucked under his chin. So, what do we do? She asked against his chest. We take it one day at a time. Keep working together, keep learning each other. And when we're both sure, we figure out what comes next. And if people talk, let them. You're worth it. Eleanor closed her eyes, breathing in his scent. Leather and pine and home. You're worth it too, Cole Bennett. They stood there as the sun painted the sky, orange and pink, holding each other like they'd found something neither had known they'd been searching for. But peace, Eleanor was learning, was often short-lived on the frontier. 2 days later, Earl Jackson rode onto the property with 4 armed men. Eleanor was in the garden when she heard the horses. She looked up to see Cole emerging from the barn, his hand resting on the gun at his hip. Jackson, Cole said, his voice cold. You're on my land uninvited. Jackson was a heavy man with cold eyes and a cruel mouth. Just being neighborly, Bennett. Heard you been collecting my horses. Those horses were abused and abandoned. They're mine now. See, that's where you're wrong. Jackson's smile was ugly. Those horses are mine, and I want them back. No. Doom. The word hung in the air, simple and final. Jackson's eyes narrowed. I'm trying to be reasonable here. Give me my property and we'll forget this happened. Those animals aren't property. They're living creatures you half-killed through neglect. Cole's voice was steady, but Eleanor could see the tension in his shoulders. They stay here. You're making a mistake, Bennett. The only mistake is you thinking you can ride onto my land and make demands. Jackson's gaze shifted to Eleanor, still standing in the garden with dirt on her hands and fear in her heart. That your new woman. Heard you got yourself a widow. His tone made the word filthy. Pretty little thing. Be a shame if something happened to her while you were out mending fences. Cole moved so fast Eleanor barely saw it. One moment he was standing still. The next he had Jackson by the collar, half dragged from his horse. You threaten her again, Cole said, his voice deadly quiet. And I'll kill you. That's not a threat, Jackson. That's a promise. Jackson's men reached for their guns, but Cole's ranch hands had emerged from various buildings, all armed, all loyal. The standoff stretched for heartbeats. Then Jackson laughed, cold and ugly. You can't protect her and your land and those horses all at once, Bennett. Something's got to give. Cole released him with a shove. Get off my property. Jackson straightened his collar, his eyes promising violence. This isn't over. They rode out slowly, deliberately, leaving threat hanging in the air like smoke. Eleanor's legs felt weak, but she walked to Cole steadily. His hands were shaking with suppressed rage. Cole, I won't let him hurt you. He turned to her, his eyes fierce. Whatever it takes, I won't let him hurt you. I know, but we need to be smart about this. Over dinner, They made plans. The ranch hands would take turns keeping watch at night. Eleanor would keep a rifle within reach at all times. Cole would ride out to speak with the sheriff in town. But that night, lying alone in her cabin, Eleanor couldn't sleep. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. A soft knock on her door made her grab the rifle. "It's me!" Cole's voice came through the wood. "Can I come in?" Eleanor opened the door to find him standing there in the moonlight, looking uncertain. "I couldn't sleep," he admitted. "Kept thinking about Jackson's threat, about you here alone. I have the rifle." "I know," but he ran a hand through his hair. "Can I stay?" "Just to sleep. I'll take the floor. I need to know you're safe." Eleanor's heart swelled. "You can take the bed. It's big enough for two and we're both adults." "Eleanor, I trust you, Cole, and honestly, I'll sleep better knowing you're here too." They lay down together, fully clothed, on opposite sides of the bed. But in the darkness, Eleanor's hand found his. "Thank you," she whispered. His fingers threaded through hers. "For what?" "For making me feel safe. For caring. For being a good man in a world that doesn't always reward it." Cole was quiet for a moment. Then, "You make me want to be better than I am. You're already better than you know." He pulled her closer, and she went willingly, tucking herself against his chest. His arms came around her, warm and solid. "Is this okay?" he asked softly. "It's perfect." They fell asleep like that, tangled together, two lonely souls finding comfort in each other's warmth. Eleanor woke to find morning light streaming through the window and Cole watching her with soft eyes. "Morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning." She should feel embarrassed, waking in a man's arms, but she only felt peaceful. "You stayed." "Told you I would." And they lay there for a long moment, just looking at each other. "Eleanor, I need to tell you something," Cole said finally. Her heart skipped. "What?" "When my wife left, she told me I was too hard to love, too closed off, too focused on work, not enough fun or romance or whatever it was she wanted." He paused, his thumb tracing circles on her arm. "Made me think maybe I wasn't built for love, that maybe I was better off alone." "Cole, but then you showed up. And everything changed. You made me feel things I didn't know I could still feel. Made me want things I'd given up on." Tears pricked Eleanor's eyes. "What things?" "A partner. A real marriage. Not just an arrangement. Someone to build a life with." His hand cupped her cheek. "You, Eleanor. I want you. I want you too," she whispered. "But I'm scared. What if I'm not enough? What if you're more than enough? You're everything." He kissed her then, morning breath and all, and Eleanor kissed him back with everything she had. His hands tangled in her hair, her fingers clutched his shirt, and the kiss deepened into something heated and desperate. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole groaned. "We should stop." "Why?" "Because I'm trying to be respectful. Court you proper, and if we keep kissing like that, I'm going to forget all my good intentions." Eleanor smiled against his neck. "Maybe I don't want you to be quite so respectful." "Eleanor Grant, are you trying to seduce me?" "Is it working?" He laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Too well, but I want to do this right. Want you to be sure." She pulled back to look at him. "I am sure. I've been sure for weeks." "Then marry me." The words hung in the air between them. Eleanor's heart stopped, then raced. "What?" "Marry me," Cole repeated, more certain now. "I know it's fast. I know we should wait. But I also know I don't want to spend another night without you. I don't want to pretend this is just employer and employee. I want you to be my wife, Eleanor. For real this time. Not like before. A marriage built on love, not convenience." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." His smile could have lit the whole Montana territory. He kissed her again, deep and claiming, then pulled her tight against him. "I'll make you happy," he promised. "I swear it. You already do." And they spent the morning making plans. They'd ride to town, speak to the preacher, make it legal and official. Cole wanted her protected, wanted his name to shield her from Jackson and anyone else who might threaten her. But more than that, he wanted her to be his. Completely, finally, truly his. The ranch hands were surprised but supportive. Dutch even offered to stand as witness. "About time, boss," Samuel said with a grin. "We've been watching you two dance around each other for weeks." But the celebration was cut short when they discovered 3 more of Jackson's horses on the property, all worse off than the first batch. "He's baiting us," Cole said grimly. "Wants us to keep them so he can accuse us of theft. Or he's trying to overwhelm us," Eleanor suggested. "Make it impossible to care for them all." "We can manage," Cole said, "between all of us." "No," Eleanor touched his arm. "We take them to the sheriff, document their condition, Turn them over to the law. Let Jackson hang himself with his own cruelty. Cole looked at her with new admiration. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just didn't notice. He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. I notice everything about you now. They loaded the horses into a wagon and made the trip to town together. The sheriff, a grizzled man named Cooper, took one look at the animals and cursed. Jackson's been doing this for years, he admitted, but nobody's been willing to testify against him. I will, Cole said, and I'll protect anyone else who does the same. The sheriff nodded slowly. All right, but you know he won't take this lying down. Let him try. On the way back to the ranch, Eleanor watched Cole's profile against the setting sun. Strong and determined, willing to fight for what was right even when it was dangerous. I love you, she said suddenly. Cole pulled the wagon to a stop, turning to her with wonder in his eyes. Say that again. I love you, Cole Bennett. I think I have for weeks, but I was too scared to admit it. He pulled her into his lap, not caring that they were on a public road, and kissed her until they were both dizzy. I love you too, he said against her lips. So damn much it terrifies me. Good, we can be terrified together. That night, they were married in the small church in town, with Dutch and Samuel as witnesses. The preacher looked skeptical about the speed of it all, but Cole's determination and Eleanor's obvious joy won him over. Do you, Cole Bennett, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. No hesitation. Just certainty. And do you, Eleanor Grant, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Eleanor looked at Cole, this man who'd given her safety, purpose, and love, when she thought she'd never find any of those again. I do. The kiss he gave her when the preacher pronounced them married was thorough enough to make Dutch cough and Samuel laugh. Mrs. Bennett, Cole murmured against her lips. Mr. Bennett, she replied, smiling. They rode back to the ranch as the stars came out. Eleanor tucked against Cole's side, both of them giddy with joy and promise. But their happiness was short-lived. They found the main house on fire. Cole was off the wagon before it fully stopped, running toward the flames. Eleanor grabbed the rifle and followed, her heart in her throat. The horses! Cole shouted. We have to get the horses out. The barn wasn't burning yet, but flames from the house were spreading fast. Cole and the ranch hands worked frantically to free the animals, while Eleanor helped guide them to safety. Storm was the last one out, wild-eyed, but trusting Cole enough to follow him through the smoke. By the time the fire burned itself out, the house was a total loss. Everything Eleanor had cooked in, cleaned, made into a home. Gone, but everyone was safe. All the animals were safe, and standing at the property line, watching from a distance, was Earl Jackson. He did this, Eleanor said, fury making her voice shake. I know. Cole's face was hard as stone, and he's going to pay for it. Not tonight. Eleanor grabbed his arm. Tonight we make sure everyone's safe. Tomorrow we plan. Cole looked at her, saw the strength there, and nodded. You're right. Tomorrow. They spent the night in the barn. All of them. Cole, Eleanor, the ranch hands, even the horses. It was cramped and uncomfortable, but they were together. Eleanor lay in Cole's arms, both of them exhausted but unable to sleep. I'm sorry, Cole said quietly. This is my fault. I should have... Stop! Eleanor pressed her finger to his lips. This is Jackson's fault, not yours, and we're going to stop him. How? By being smarter, stronger, together. Cole pulled her closer. I could have lost you tonight, but you didn't. I'm here. I'm safe. We all are. What did I do to deserve you? You gave a lonely widow a job. You let her tend your horse. You saw her as more than just her circumstances. Eleanor kissed his jaw. You loved her when she thought she'd never be loved again. I'll love you until my last breath, Eleanor Bennett, and I'll love you just as long. The next morning they rode to town again. This time Cole brought documentation, witness statements, evidence of the fire, a list of every crime Jackson had committed. The sheriff listened, his face growing grimmer. I believe you, he said finally, but proving it in court. Then we don't go through the courts, Cole said. We go through the town, make it public, let everyone know what kind of man Jackson is. Eleanor had an idea. The church social is this weekend. Everyone will be there. What if we brought the horses? Let people see with their own eyes what he's done. The sheriff's eyes lit up. That might work. Hard to defend yourself when the evidence is standing right there. They spent the next few days preparing. The horses, now properly cared for, would tell their own story. Cole practiced what he would say. Eleanor organized the presentation. When Saturday came, half the town gathered at the church. Jackson was there too, smug and confident. until Cole led out the first horse. The gasps from the crowd were audible. The poor animal, though healing, still bore obvious signs of abuse. "This is what Earl Jackson calls animal husbandry," Cole said, his voice carrying. "These horses were starved, beaten, and abandoned. When I took them in to save their lives, he threatened my wife and burned down my house." "That's a lie!" Jackson shouted, but Cole kept going, leading out each horse, telling their story. The crowd's mood shifted from curious to angry. When Eleanor spoke, her voice was clear and strong. "I know what it's like to feel powerless, to be at the mercy of someone stronger. These animals couldn't fight back, but we can. We can make sure men like Earl Jackson face consequences." The murmurs of agreement grew louder. Jackson tried to defend himself, but his words rang hollow against the evidence. When the sheriff stepped forward with arrest papers, citing destruction of property and animal cruelty, the crowd actually cheered. As Jackson was led away, still protesting, Cole pulled Eleanor close. "You were amazing," he said. "So were you." They watched as the community rallied around them, offering materials to rebuild the house, volunteering labor, bringing food and supplies. "This is what home feels like," Eleanor said softly. "Not just a place, but people who care." "You gave me that," Cole said. "Made this ranch into a real home." Over the following weeks, they rebuilt not just the house, but their life together. The new house was bigger, with a proper kitchen for Eleanor and a library for their evening reading lessons. Storm's trust extended to Eleanor completely now. She could ride him, tend him, and he followed her around like a devoted puppy. "I think he loves you more than me," Cole joked one evening, watching his wife brush the stallion's coat. "Impossible. He knew you first, but you healed him, made him believe in kindness again." Cole wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Kind of like what you did for me." Eleanor leaned back into his embrace. "You healed me too, made me believe in love again. Think we're even then. I think we're just getting started." Cole turned her in his arms, his eyes dark with promise. "You know, we've been married 2 months now, I'm aware, and we've been very respectful." Eleanor smiled. "Also aware. I'm done being respectful." He kissed her, deep and claiming, and Eleanor kissed him back with equal hunger. When he swept her into his arms and carried her toward their bedroom, she laughed against his neck. "Took you long enough, Cowboy. Had to make sure you were sure. I've been sure since the day your horse trusted me." "Then let me show you just how sure I am." Their lovemaking was tender and passionate, careful and wild. Cole worshipped her body like it was precious, and Eleanor gave herself to him completely. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, both of them sated and happy, Eleanor traced the scar on Cole's eyebrow. "How did you get this?" she asked. "Bar fight, years ago. Defending a woman being harassed." "Of course you were." She kissed the scar. "You've always been a protector, only for those worth protecting." "And am I worth it?" "You're worth everything, Eleanor Bennett. Everything and more." The weeks following their wedding night brought a new rhythm to their lives. Eleanor woke each morning, wrapped in Cole's arms, his steady heartbeat a comfort she'd never known with Thomas. Where her first husband had been distant and mechanical in his affections, Cole was tender and passionate, making her feel cherished with every touch. But the shadow of Jackson's arrest hung over them. Word came from town that he'd been released on bail, pending trial. The news made Eleanor's stomach clench with fear. "He won't come back here," Cole assured her, though she could see the tension in his shoulders. "Not with the whole town watching." Men like him don't care about witnesses," Eleanor said quietly. "They care about revenge." She was right to worry. It started small. Fences cut in the night. Gates left open so cattle could wander. Tools went missing from the barn. Nothing they could prove was Jackson, but they all knew. Cole increased the night watches, and Eleanor started sleeping lighter, one hand always near the rifle Cole had given her. "I hate this," she confessed one night, lying in his arms. "Feeling afraid in our own home. It won't be forever." Cole's hand stroked her hair, soothing. "The trial's in 6 weeks. Once he's convicted, he'll be in prison. And if he's not convicted—" Cole was silent for a long moment. "Then we deal with it together." But Eleanor could hear the worry beneath his confident words. The next morning, she found one of the rescued mares dead in the pasture. "Poisoned," the vet confirmed. Deliberately. Eleanor wept over the horse's body, her hands shaking with rage and grief. This beautiful creature, who'd survived so much, who'd finally found safety, murdered out of spite. Cole held her while she cried, his own jaw tight with fury. "I'm going to end this," he said. "How? I don't know yet, but I won't let him keep hurting what's ours." The funeral for the mare brought the community together again. Neighbors came to pay respects, to offer support, to stand witness to Jackson's cruelty. "This has to stop," the preacher said quietly to Cole. "That man is a plague on this territory. I'm open to suggestions, Reverend. Have you considered selling? Starting fresh somewhere Jackson can't reach you?" Eleanor saw Cole's face harden. "This is my land, my home. I won't be driven off by a bully, even if it costs you everything." Cole's hand found Eleanor's. "Not everything. As long as I have her, I have what matters most." The Reverend's expression softened. "Then may God protect you both." That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She stood at the window, watching the moonlit yard, jumping at every shadow. "Come back to bed," Cole said softly. "I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see that mare. I think about what else he might do." Cole came to stand behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist. "I know you're scared. I am too. You are terrified. Not for myself, but for you, for what I'd do if he hurt you." His voice dropped to a rough whisper. "I'd kill him, Eleanor, without hesitation, and I'd probably hang for it." Eleanor turned in his arms, pressing her palm to his cheek. "Then we won't let it come to that. We'll be smarter, more careful." "How did you get so brave?" "I'm not brave. I'm just tired of running, tired of being afraid." She kissed him softly. "And I have something worth fighting for now." Cole's arms tightened around her. "So do I." They made love slowly that night, desperate and tender all at once. Afterward, Eleanor lay with her head on Cole's chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. "Tell me something good," she whispered. "Something to think about instead of fear." Cole was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "When I was a boy in Texas, my mother used to make apple pie every Sunday. The whole house would smell like cinnamon and butter. My father would come in from the fields early just to watch her work." "That sounds beautiful." It was. They loved each other, something fierce, used to hold hands while they sat on the porch, even after 30 years of marriage. His voice grew wistful. "I always wanted that kind of love that lasts." Eleanor lifted her head to look at him. "You have it now, with me." His eyes met hers, dark and sincere. "Think we'll make it to 30 years? I think we'll make it to 60. Cole smiled, pulling her close again. "I'll hold you to that, Mrs. Bennet." The next weeks were tense but peaceful. The sabotage stopped. Whether because Jackson was being watched more closely or planning something bigger, they couldn't know. Eleanor threw herself into making the ranch a true home. She planted flowers around the new house, sewed curtains for the windows, filled the rooms with small touches that made the space feel lived in and loved. Cole watched her work with wonder in his eyes. "You're nesting," he said one afternoon, finding her rearranging furniture for the 3rd time that week. "I'm decorating. You're making this place perfect for when—" He stopped himself. "For when what?" Cole's ears reddened slightly. "For when we have children, someday, if you want." Eleanor's heart swelled. She hadn't let herself think that far ahead, too focused on just surviving each day. But now, watching this strong man stumble over words about their future family, "I want," she said softly. "I want everything with you, Cole Bennet." He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling her into a kiss that made her toes curl. "Then let's make that future happen," he murmured against her lips. They tried that very afternoon, and many afternoons after, though Eleanor knew these things took time. Meanwhile, Storm continued to thrive. The stallion had become something of a local legend. The wild horse who'd learned to trust again. People came from neighboring ranches just to see him, to hear the story of how a widow's gentle touch had tamed him. "He was never wild," Eleanor told the visitors. "Just hurt. There's a difference." One visitor was different from the others. A young woman, barely 20, with haunted eyes and a trembling voice. "I heard about what you did," she said to Eleanor, "with the horses. Standing up to Mr. Jackson." "What's your name, dear?" "Lily. I worked for Mr. Jackson." The girl's hands twisted in her apron. "He's not just cruel to animals." Eleanor's blood ran cold. "Did he hurt you?" Lily's silence was answer enough. "Come inside," Eleanor said gently. "Let me get you some tea." Over the next hour, Lily told her story. How Jackson had hired her as a housekeeper after her father died. How he'd started with inappropriate comments, then touches, then worse. How she'd been too afraid to tell anyone because Jackson owned half the businesses in town and could ruin her reputation with a word. "But seeing you stand up to him at the church," Lily said, tears streaming down her face, "it made me think maybe I could too." Eleanor held the girl's hand, her own heart breaking. "You're safe now. You never have to go back there." When Cole came in and heard the story, his face turned to stone. "We're testifying to this at the trial," he said flatly. All of it. He'll destroy me, Lily whispered. No, Eleanor said firmly. We'll protect you. You can stay here, work for us. Cole will make sure Jackson can't touch you. Cole nodded. I give you my word. Lily stayed. She took the small room off the kitchen and helped Eleanor with the household work. Having another woman around eased some of Eleanor's loneliness during the long days when Cole was out on the range. The two women grew close. Lily was quiet but kind, damaged but not broken. She had a way with the chickens that made Eleanor laugh, and she could sew better than anyone Eleanor had ever seen. My mother taught me, Lily said one afternoon, her needle flying through fabric. Before she died, said a woman with skills would always survive. Your mother was right. I wish she'd lived long enough to meet someone like you. Someone who shows that survival isn't the same as living. Eleanor paused in her own sewing. What do you mean? I've been surviving for 2 years, just getting through each day. Staying small and quiet so Jackson wouldn't notice me. But watching you and Mr. Bennett, Lily's eyes grew wistful. You're living, really living, loving each other, building something together. That's what I want someday. You'll have it, Eleanor promised, when you're ready. As the trial date approached, tensions mounted. Jackson's lawyer tried every trick to delay or dismiss the charges, but the community stood firm. Witness after witness coming forward with stories of Jackson's cruelty and corruption. The night before the trial, Eleanor couldn't eat. Her stomach churned with anxiety about testifying, about facing Jackson in court, about the possibility that he might go free. Come here, Cole said, pulling her into his lap as they sat before the fire. You're shaking. I'm scared. Me too. But tomorrow, we tell the truth. That's all we can do. What if it's not enough? Then we keep fighting. We don't stop, we don't give up, we don't let him win. Cole's hand cupped her face. You're the strongest person I know, Eleanor. You've survived poverty, bad marriage, starting over with nothing. You can survive this. I don't feel strong. Strength isn't about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and doing what's right anyway. He kissed her forehead. And you do that every single day. Eleanor pressed her face into his neck, breathing him in. What did I do to deserve you? You showed up at my ranch and whispered to my horse. That's all it took. She laughed despite her tears. That simple, that complicated, that perfect. They sat like that until the fire burned low, holding each other against the uncertainty of tomorrow. The trial was held in the town's largest building, the church, converted for the occasion. It seemed fitting, Eleanor thought, that Jackson would face judgment in a house of God. The courtroom was packed. It seemed like half the territory had come to watch. Jackson sat at the defense table, his face a mask of false confidence. But Eleanor saw the way his eyes darted around the room, calculating, searching for weakness. The prosecution called witness after witness. Ranchers who'd seen Jackson abuse his horses, townspeople who'd watched him cheat and intimidate, ranch hands who'd quit rather than participate in his cruelty. Then it was Eleanor's turn. She walked to the witness stand on trembling legs, acutely aware of every eye on her. But when she sat down and looked out at the crowd, she saw Cole. He sat in the front row, his eyes locked on hers, steady and sure. For him, she could do this. The prosecutor was gentle, leading her through her testimony, how she'd found the injured horses, how they'd borne signs of deliberate abuse, how Jackson had threatened her and burned their home. Jackson's lawyer tried to rattle her during cross-examination. Isn't it true, Mrs. Bennett, that you were desperate for work when you came to this ranch? Yes. Desperate enough to fabricate stories to please your employer? I didn't fabricate anything. Those horses were real. Their injuries were real. But you're not a veterinarian. How can you know the injuries were deliberate? Eleanor lifted her chin. Because I know the difference between an accident and cruelty, just like I know the difference between a man protecting his property and a man threatening violence against a woman. The lawyer's eyes narrowed. Are you calling my client violent? I'm calling him what he is, a bully who hurts those weaker than him because it makes him feel powerful. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The judge called for order. But Eleanor wasn't done. And I'm saying that if we let men like Earl Jackson get away with cruelty, to animals, to women, to anyone, then we're all complicit. We're all guilty. She saw heads nodding in the crowd, saw women wiping tears, saw Cole looking at her with such pride and love that her heart felt too big for her chest. When Lily took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. The young woman's voice shook, but she told her story with painful honesty. What Jackson had done to her, how he'd threatened her into silence, how Eleanor and Cole had given her the courage to speak. Jackson's face turned purple with rage. He started to stand, but his lawyer pulled him back down. The jury deliberated for less than an hour, guilty on all charges. The courtroom exploded in cheers. Eleanor found herself swept into Cole's arms, both of them laughing and crying at once. "It's over," Cole said. "It's finally over." But Eleanor saw Jackson being led away in chains, and the look he shot them was pure venom. Even defeated, he was dangerous. "Not quite over," she whispered. "Not until he's behind bars for good." The sentencing came a week later. 10 years in territorial prison for animal cruelty, arson, and assault. Jackson would be an old man by the time he got out. The celebration that night brought the whole community to the Bennett Ranch. Dutch and Samuel roasted a pig, neighbors brought food and drink, and the party lasted until dawn. Eleanor danced with Cole under the stars, his arms strong around her waist, her head on his shoulder. "Happy?" he asked, deliriously. "Think we can have a quiet life now?" "I hope so. Though with you, I'm learning to expect the unexpected." Cole laughed, the sound rich and free. "Fair enough, but I promise, no more drama. Just you, me, the ranch, and whatever comes next." Whatever comes next arrived 2 months later in the form of morning sickness. Eleanor realized she was pregnant on a Tuesday morning when the smell of bacon sent her running for the outhouse. She spent the next hour in there, alternating between vomiting and grinning like a fool. She told Cole that night at dinner, watching his face carefully. "I'm going to have a baby. We're going to have a baby." Cole's fork clattered to his plate. We're Yes." He was around the table in an instant, pulling her up and into his arms. "A baby. Our baby. Are you happy?" "Happy." He pulled back to look at her, and his eyes were wet. "Eleanor, I'm terrified and thrilled and so damn grateful. I can't even breathe right." "Me too." He kissed her then, soft and reverent, his hand already moving to her still flat stomach. "When? Spring, I think. April or May. A spring baby." Cole's smile could have lit the whole territory. "Perfect." The pregnancy was hard at first. Eleanor spent the first 3 months exhausted and nauseous, barely able to keep food down. Cole hovered over her like a worried mother hen, which would have been annoying if it wasn't so endearing. "I'm fine," she kept telling him. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time." "Not my woman. Not my baby." "Cole Bennett, if you don't stop treating me like I'm made of glass, I'm going to throw something at you." He grinned, unrepentant. "Throw away. At least that means you've got energy." As her belly grew, so did Cole's protectiveness. He wouldn't let her lift anything heavier than a dish rag. He built her a special chair for the porch so she could sit comfortably. He even started cooking dinner so she could rest after lunch. "You're going to spoil me," Eleanor said, watching him burn yet another attempt at biscuits. "That's the plan. I can still cook, you know. Being pregnant doesn't make me helpless." "I know, but humor me. Let me take care of you." She softened, seeing the need in his eyes. Taking care of her made him feel useful, made him feel like he was contributing to this miracle growing inside her. "All right," she said, "but maybe let me supervise the biscuits, for everyone's sake." Winter came hard that year, with snow piling high and temperatures dropping low. Eleanor spent most days inside, sewing baby clothes and reading by the fire. Cole would come in from checking on the stock, his face red with cold, and she'd warm his hands between hers. "Baby's moving," she said one evening, pressing his palm to her swollen belly. Cole's eyes went wide as he felt the tiny kicks. "That's our baby's in there. Actually in there. Where else would it be?" "I know, it's real. We made a person, Eleanor." "We did, and in a few months, we'll get to meet them." Cole pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you so much, it scares me sometimes." "I love you too. Both of you." The baby came on a warm April afternoon, 3 weeks early, but healthy and squalling. Eleanor labored for 12 hours, with Cole holding her hand and refusing to leave, despite the midwife's suggestions. "I'm not going anywhere," he said firmly. "She needs me." And Eleanor did need him. His presence steadied her through the pain. His voice soothed her when she thought she couldn't take any more. His tears, when the baby finally arrived, matched her own. "It's a girl," the midwife announced, placing the tiny, perfect bundle in Eleanor's arms. "A girl," Cole breathed, looking down at his daughter with pure wonder. "She's beautiful. She's perfect." The baby had Eleanor's delicate features and Cole's dark hair. She opened her eyes, also dark like her father's, and seemed to look right at them. "Hello, little one," Eleanor whispered. "We've been waiting for you." "What should we name her?" Cole asked, his finger stroking their daughter's tiny hand. "Eleanor had been thinking about this for months." "Sarah, after your mother." Cole's face crumpled. "Eleanor, she raised a good man, a man who loves deeply and protects fiercely. I want our daughter to carry her name, Sarah Bennett." Cole tested it, then smiled. "It's perfect. She's perfect. You're perfect. We're a family," Eleanor said, looking at her husband and daughter with overflowing heart. A real family. 6 months later, Eleanor stood in the garden she'd planted, one hand on her slightly rounded belly. The house was finished, the horses were thriving, and Cole's ranch had become the most respected in the territory. Sarah napped in a basket nearby, her tiny fists curled under her chin. She heard his footsteps before she saw him. She always did now, attuned to his presence like her own heartbeat. "There you are," Cole said, wrapping his arms around her from behind, careful of the small bump. "How are my 3 favorite people? Sarah's sleeping, and this one is making me tired already. Another girl, you think? Or a boy? Either way, they're going to be loved." Cole pressed a kiss to her neck, just like their mother. Eleanor turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd given her everything she'd never known she needed. "I never thought I'd be this happy," she admitted. "Neither did I. Thought I was destined to be alone. Good thing I'm stubborn. Good thing my horse trusted you." They both looked over at Storm, grazing peacefully nearby with a new foal at his side. One of the rescued mares had been pregnant when they'd saved her, and Storm had adopted the baby as his own. "Think he knows?" Eleanor asked. "That he brought us together?" "Probably." Cole smiled, his hand moving to her belly. "Animals know more than we give them credit for." As the sun set over the Montana territory, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Cole and Eleanor stood together in the life they'd built. A life born from loneliness and pain, but transformed by trust, love, and the courage to believe in second chances. "I love you," Eleanor whispered. "I love you too," Cole replied. "Today, tomorrow, and every day after." And in the gathering twilight, surrounded by the land they'd fought for, the animals they'd saved, and the family they'd created, 2 broken souls who'd found each other stood complete at last. Storm whinnied softly, as if in approval, and somewhere in the distance a coyote called to the rising moon. Sarah stirred in her basket, making the small sounds that meant she'd wake soon, wanting to be fed and held. Eleanor smiled, already moving toward her daughter. Home, Eleanor thought, wasn't just a place. It was this man, this land, this life they'd claimed together. It was the baby in the basket and the one growing inside her. It was Storm and his adopted foal, the rescued horses now thriving in their pastures, the ranch hands who'd become family. It was every sunrise they'd faced together and every challenge they'd overcome as one. And it was finally, beautifully, gloriously theirs.